This is the First Nation of Aamjiwnaang's burial ground. These people have been here for hundreds of years, and about 70 years ago, they got some great new neighbors. This is the Chemical Valley. The first thing you notice when you visit Sarnia, Ontario, is the smell. Imagine a mixture of gasoline, melting asphalt, and a trace of rotten egg, smacking you in the face and crawling up your nose every time you breathe. It's a cocktail that made me unpleasantly high and dizzy. That smell is the Chemical Valley, where 40% of Canada's petrochemical industry is located in a 25-kilometer squared area. The Chemical Valley is responsible for the production of gasoline, plastics, pesticides, fertilizers, cosmetics, and a whole bunch of other chemicals that our society relies on. It's estimated that in 2013 alone, the Canadian petrochemical industry will generate $24 billion in sales. 2 years ago, thanks to the 60 petrochemical plants and oil refineries that operate in the Chemical Valley 24/7, the World Health Organization gave Sarnia the title of the worst air in all of Canada. To make matters worse, a First Nations reserve called Aamjiwnaang, where just under 1,000 people live, shares a fence line with the Chemical Valley. This is a serious health concern for the people of Aamjiwnaang, as their community has consistently claimed to have higher cancer and miscarriage rates than the national average. And yet the government has not launched a proper health study to investigate their allegations.
First Nations in Sarnia, Ontario.
Tensions between the First Nations community of Canada, the government, and the petrochemical industry have been running high for a very long time. Regular participation in highway blockades and protests are the norm for many First Nations communities in Canada who are pushing back against environmental damage to their native land.
You're fucking cowards!
What happened is that Anthony W. George was killed. His relatives insist he was a peaceful man.
One of the major issues that the residents of Aamjiwnaang need to deal with are chemical leaks from the plants themselves. Oftentimes, these leaks go unreported, and in the first half of 2013 alone, there were 3 spills of hydrogen sulfide. One of them sent several small children from Aamjiwnaang's daycare to the hospital. Once we heard about Aamjiwnaang's struggle, we knew we had to go visit the Chemical Valley ourselves to try and get a better sense of how the relationship between the First Nations and the petrochemical industry is being handled, what's being done to ensure the safety of the people of Aamjiwnaang, and what the future of the Chemical Valley holds. We visited Sarnia while a high-profile energy conference was being held. Political leaders and energy executives had converged on the city to discuss how more money could be squeezed out of Canada's most valuable resource, our oil. As you might imagine, the people of Aamjiwnaang were not happy to hear that more industry would be coming their way.
Clean water, clean air, healthy families.
No more chemicals in the valley!
No more chemicals in the valley.
While the protesters demonstrated outside of the conference, the energy industry discussed a plan to build new oil pipelines all across Canada. In response, VANESSA Gray, a 20-year-old activist from Aamjiwnaang, was there to cause a disruption.
I have the right to clean air and fresh water. If you guys feel that money is more important than having water, then there's something really fucked up here. Thank you.
When you were on stage, there were probably about 6 different people that came up to you who were trying to get you off stage. You didn't say a word to any of them. Is that a difficult thing to do, just sort of keeping a stone face?
Yeah, I mean, this lady came up to me and said that I was taking her right away to enjoy the conference in peace.
How did you feel about that?
I feel that she's taking my right away to breathe air and drink water.
After chatting with VANESSA outside of the energy conference, we figured we should go meet up with her in a less stressful setting. That didn't exactly happen. She brought us to a site in the valley, right by Aamjiwnaang, called the Blue Water Plaque. It commemorates a middle-class white community who was evacuated from the area because of the unsafe living conditions that Aamjiwnaang's residents still live with. You're getting involved in these very important, big issues at a really young age. Like, what was it that first sort of drove you to try and make a difference?
I've just been affected by cancer in my family and friends and loved ones so much, and I would like to see Chemical Valley exposed more than it is now. I'd like some more health studies to be done. People all over can see how fucked up the situation is, because it's something that a lot of people don't understand and they don't see every day.
We went over to the reserve's well-kept baseball diamond that sits directly across from a massive refinery to speak with Christine Rogers. Christine is a mother of 3 daughters who were affected by Shell's hydrogen sulfide leak in January of 2013, a leak that was discovered by the staff of Amgenong's daycare center and the children they were caring for after they all noticed a rotten egg smell in the air. Several children were sent to hospital as a result, and because Shell did not properly alert the community, the kids were wrongfully diagnosed for having colds or flus when really they were suffering from hydrogen sulfide exposure.
You feel like a failure. As a parent, you do everything you can to protect your children. You do everything that you can to make sure that your children are safe. And when something like that happens, it's beyond your control, and you feel like you've lost control. What if it had been a bigger spill? You think you're prepared, but really you're not. And I don't, honestly, it feels helpless. She had gotten the crusted eyes at that time, and her eyes were bloodshot for 3 days, and I had to take her to the doctor and make sure there were no infections.
And how do you think these industries need to step up and help this from not happening?
If you want to operate here, then you should have top-of-the-line technology. You should be putting safety above your dollars. It's going to cost too much. It's going to cost too much. That's what you hear all the time, and I don't care. I don't care how much it costs you. That's my child's safety. They would too if their kids lived right here. There's a funny saying that my kids, they came up with. You see the smoke coming out over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to think that those were cloud makers. I had to tell her, no, that's not a cloud. That's pollution. That's bad stuff that we're breathing in. So they came up with their own saying, the more clouds in the sky, the more people will die. As a parent, that is heartbreaking that my kids think about where they live like that.
I'm here outside of the Shell oil refinery, which is one of the largest refineries in the Chemical Valley. The air fucking smells like gas, and this plant alone has been responsible for 3 different leaks of hydrogen sulfide in the past 5 months since the beginning of 2013. And if you're not already familiar with hydrogen sulfide, it was actually used as a chemical weapon by the British in World War I, so you know it's really good for you. When oil was first discovered near Sarnia in the mid-1800s, mass industrialization was not far away. To support the war effort, in the early 1940s, Sarnia became a major center for the petrochemical industry, and from there, business began to boom. Sarnia's proximity to the United States quickly made it an exporting hotspot for Canadian petrochemicals, and to meet the demand, companies were quick to buy up land from the people of Amgenong back when the concept of environmental impact didn't really exist. Then, during the 60s and 70s, Sarnia prospered as the industry exploded with business. All of a sudden, the Chemical Valley was being heralded as a wonderfully exciting development. Because of this, no one should be under any illusion when it comes to the existence of the Chemical Valley. We asked for it. The operation of our society relies on petrochemicals. This is an issue that all of us are responsible for. I went to speak with Mayor Mike Bradley, who has been running Sarnia for over 25 years, to discuss the history of the Chemical Valley, what can be done to improve its emissions, and the industry's impact on the people of Amgenong and Sarnia at large.
It doesn't matter where you go in North America, you will find toxins and other things. The question always in this community and anyone that has an industrial complex is, what does the cluster do? Health Canada came to the community and said, we're willing to do this health study, and it's going to cost millions, and then within a very short period of time, they remove themselves from the process. And so that's been the issue of how can you fund it, because it is not an inexpensive process to make it credible. I don't believe the study should have any money from industry, and yet it is going to be funded in part by industry.
What do you think the valid reasons, if any, are for Aamjiwnaang to mistrust government or industry?
I mean, the first oil company came here over 100 years ago. But what really accelerated the industry was they needed to be on the water during the Second World War. So the big plant Polysar came here, located here, that made rubber. Then all the other plants grew around it. Well, the natural place to go to was where the Aamjiwnaang Reserve was. So over the years, it's been eroded by industry and I understand by the city, and others just taking it away. History hasn't been fair to the Aamjiwnaang. There's no question of that. But what I've been trying to do is make sure that this generation's life will be better by doing what we can to make sure that that relationship is more stable than it's been in the past. You would not do this today. You would not locate industry close to a city. You would not locate industry on reserve lands in the way it was done 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
We heard a lot about a scientist named Jim Brophy, who used to work very closely with Aamjiwnaang and the workplace victims of Chemical Valley, who have developed serious health conditions from their jobs in the plants. Jim has since been chased out of Sarnia and now lives in Windsor. We went to visit Jim to discuss what the Canadian government and the petrochemical industry need to do to protect the people of Aamjiwnaang and the blue-collar workforce of the Chemical Valley itself. All right, I'm here with Dr. Jim Brophy here in Windsor, and across the river there, we've got a 3-story tall, 1 city block long pile of petroleum coke. Can you maybe explain what that is?
That's the end stage of refinery process. And in that particular case, that's bitumen tar sands crude.
Yes, so that's coming out from Alberta.
And it's going to a large refinery, Marathon Refinery in southwest Detroit. Southwest Detroit and Sarnia, Aamjiwnaang are classic examples of environmental racism. The whole environmental justice movement was in response to these types of egregious, really criminal situations where poor communities find their neighbors are these, large industrial complexes, and there's little or no protection from the kinds of exposures that these people get. So let's remember, who is the highest populations at risk? It's First Nations communities on the fence line. It's blue-collar industrial workers. It's the poor, working class and poor people who live in South Sarnia, not the CEOs. And it's the same in southwest Detroit, right across from Marathon. It's the poorest people in the city.
It's clear that the energy industry has a habit of letting the poorest neighborhoods inhale the majority of their pollution. It was obvious in Windsor as we stared at the coke pile, and it's very obvious in Aamjiwnaang, where refineries surround the community. We went to see Ada Lockridge, a local hero in Aamjiwnaang, who has continually battled against industry to go for a toxic tour of the Chemical Valley.
Listen to this. So these guys are allowed to put out so much into the air. And if they don't put it all out, they can trade those credits or sell the credits to another company so they can pump out more.
So if one clean company is doing well and they're staying under their regulated emissions, they can sell that excess to a really bad company who can then extend.
Yeah. We used to come back here and we would, Solidarity Day, which is the National Aboriginal Day. So we would come back here to have canoe races, everybody, like we go canoeing and then whatever, they tip and it was all funny
we're all
games
wet now.
until we found out what was here. And we're like, oh my God. So we had to quit having those games.
So it's mainly mercury in here?
That was what was found in the sunfish and stuff like that. We got concerned about the animals too because they're coming here and drinking. They don't know how to read.
No,
and
they don't know what that sign means.
Mm-hmm. And see our poor geese, they're all messed up. They don't know how to fly.
Yeah, that's
do you know
not
how they're
a V
supposed
at
to?
all.
Yeah. I think they're trying to tell us something.
Not only has Ada been outspoken about pollution in Amjinong throughout her adult life, she actually does her own air testing with an apparatus called the Bucket Brigade that she uses to catch unreported leaks. Ada was cool enough to show me how the Bucket Brigade works.
So you're gonna stick this part under there. So that's kind of like a lung.
Right.
You think of it as a lung that, whatever, so many minutes worth of breathing.
So you've detected quite a few different leaks here. The most recent one was the hydrogen sulfide from Shell. So can you maybe walk through that discovery?
My daughter showed up, like she lives in Corona, just south of the reserve here. So she came about 10 to 8. I was out here on my porch having my coffee, and she showed up. She says, "Oh, Mom, it's terrible out there. It's really bad. It smells like rotten eggs." So, all right, so I hurry up, got on the phone. Like I got Spills Action Center SAC on speed call, so I called them up. Hey, something's leaking here. So that was about 5 to 8. By 8 o'clock, it was on the radio, Shell's calling a code 8.
They already know if they're leaking. Why haven't they already said something?
A lot of times we are the ones who notify the company.
You are the siren.
Yeah, that we usually say, hey, something's happening over there. I called in one time and they go, what's the wind direction? I was, okay, the wind is coming from. And they go, and what's the wind speed? I was,
oh, let me go check my...
I said, hang on. I'll lick my finger, open up the window, and we'll count to see how long it takes to dry.
We live in a situation now in Canada where the oil industry has tremendous power. I mean, some would say that they literally have a lock on the federal government. It falls then to the Ada Lockridges of the world to stand up to this.
Yeah.
And so what is Ada? I mean, think about it for a second. There's Ada Lockridge, and in the past it's been, other members of the Environment Committee with her, standing there with this, plastic bucket and a filter in it, trying to register what's in the air that you can't see. Sometimes you can smell it, and then sending this filter off to California to get it analyzed, and then being given a report. I mean, what is going on here?
I'm Ada Lockridge, but they like to tease me. They call me Ada Brockovich. I've been called lots of names lately. Well, like the canary in the coal mine and all this kind of stuff. Normally, there's the clash between natives and non-natives, and there's no reason for it. I mean, like the chemicals don't care what color you are or anything anyway, so this is a human being thing, it's not a native thing.
While the citizens of Amjinong have to worry about chemical leaks on a daily basis, so do the blue-collar workers in the chemical valley itself. We went up to North Sarnia, which looks like a pretty nice place to live, to meet with Jim, a veteran employee of the chemical valley. Jim invited us into his garage to sit in front of his bright red duster and discuss his lengthy career in the petrochemical industry. A lot of what we've been hearing is that some of the major problems from Chemical Valley are legacy issues. They're problems that happened in the 60s or the 50s, and we're still just cleaning it up. But
Right.
do you find that companies have been taking ownership of those issues?
I don't believe so, no. I think they take ownership. Like it's okay to say I didn't take the cookies, but when you get caught with your hand right in the jar, you can't deny it. So when they caught with their hand in the jar, they take responsibility. When the cookies are gone, there's just a couple of crumbs sitting around. It wasn't me.
I'm outside the Sarnia Lambton Environmental Agency. We're gonna go inside and speak with Dean Edwardson. Basically, anytime you send an interview request to an oil company to talk to them, he's the guy they refer you to. So we're gonna go in and speak with him about some of the concerns the community has.
We're an overarching organization that looks at environmental quality from an ambient airshed, watershed perspective. Companies have their own environmental people that look at their sites specifically.
Well, one of the problems we've heard about time and time again is that these sirens that these plants have don't go off in time. There was that leak, I believe in January, where a daycare called in, terrible smell, a bunch of kids went to the hospital with red eyes. The hospital didn't know what to do about it because they hadn't heard about the leak, and like 4 hours later, Shell admitted to a leak. So if we're allowing the plants to do the monitoring, and this is a real example of something that happened earlier this year, do you think that's a problem?
Emergency response issues, oftentimes communication is one of your biggest problems. And in that case, I will freely admit that we had a communication problem. And clearly, it was unacceptable, and I think if you ask Shell, they would say it was unacceptable.
I would love to. They told
I'm
me
going
to
to tell
you.
They would tell you it was unacceptable.
Yeah.
Any of our plants will tell you impacting the community is not acceptable, and we're looking at things to try and improve that.
But there were 2 more hydrogen sulfide leaks in the next 4 months after it, and one of them was only discovered by Ada Lockridge in her bucket testing. I mean, that, if you're saying there was a communication problem in January, by May, when there was another hydrogen sulfide leak, shouldn't they have learned from their mistake?
Again, I can't talk to you about that. It's under legal investigation right now.
Okay, so what communication breakdown was it?
We had a communication breakdown between what occurred at Shell and the response for sounding our sirens. And we're trying to fix that.
We heard there were fish with tumors swimming around the chemical valley, which is alarming because many scientists see fish as an early indicator that something is very wrong with the environment. So we went down to Amgenong's fishing dock to speak with a fisherman who caught one of these toxic fish himself. Oh shit, yeah.
He's got, you can see all the lumps, like the lumps and stuff that are on it, and it was all over the tail. There was a big chunk on all these here. You can see them there. See them all growing up. All those little.
In 2002, as a response to Suncor's attempt to build the country's largest ethanol plant in the Chemical Valley, an environmental committee was founded in Amgenong. We went up to meet with Wilson Plain, one of the founders in the environmental committee, to discuss the community's struggle.
There was always some interest in having a body that monitors what's going on around here. Personally, I have a post on Facebook that puts up wind direction and temperature and what's happening. My interest is ongoing with respect to the environment.
Now, we were in the cemetery, and it's an alarming juxtaposition between the Suncor refinery and the cemetery.
Not a healthy place.
Yeah.
We could have a funeral procession there, and we would get caught by those emissions in the air.
A lot of times when we hear about a leak, the plants will maybe be able to blame each other because they're both emitting that pollutant, and one says what might be the other one. Does that kind of thing happen a lot?
I think the Ministry of the Environment needs to monitor the direction of the wind. Like if we started off with a bag of pollutants, just from one, what would it be like if we have 5 different
if you had
sources?
A bag and I had a bag and we both opened our bags, it's a bigger big bag up there. And who's watching the big bag?
Yep.
Nobody.
That the cumulative issue is the main issue in Amgenong. But there needs to be an ongoing monitoring of the worst offenders of those pollutants, and benzene being the top one, I think.
Even though the Ministry of the Environment didn't return our phone calls, they can and will step in to prosecute industry. In 2005, the Nova chemical plant had a serious benzene leak that lasted more than 15 hours. It was so severe that Amgenong was completely evacuated, and Nova was fined over $500,000.
The health effects of benzene are well documented in the scientific literature. The International Agency on the Research of Cancer, IARC, designates it as a definitive human carcinogen. It's connected with leukemia, all kinds of blood-related cancers. And what we have are thousands of tons of this very toxic chemical being released in Sarnia every year. Nobody is really tracking the communities that are getting the biggest exposure.
Would you say that the amount of benzene is higher in Sarnia than most other places?
No, I would not.
So despite having plants in Sarnia that emit benzene, there's no higher emissions quality here?
We are consistent. The level of benzene that we saw in our ambient monitors are consistent with what you will find in other urban centers in Canada and the United States.
My grandson, who used to live about 1.5 kilometers basically west from here, died as a result of leukemia. He's not with us anymore. He was 13. So don't know where my grandson took a deep breath or took several deep breaths, but benzene would be the cause of that leukemia.
Why should these industries be trusted?
I don't think that anybody's asking anybody to trust the industry. Trust has to be earned. And I think that our companies are trying to earn that trust. Obviously, trust oftentimes is predicated on your performance. You can be a great guy, but you go murder somebody, all of a sudden you're a murderer.
You're probably not a great guy then.
Pardon me?
You're probably not a great guy.
Well,
in that
obviously, I mean, but you know, it's like everything else, is that, you know, you do the best you can to operate, but as soon as you have an incident, you know, it causes people to maybe...
think you're a murderer.
Well, yeah.
We're walking through a park that's completely fenced off because of all the asbestos contamination. So this only happened a few weeks ago. The park's basically abandoned as a result, which is a bummer because it's right in the center of the city, and it's definitely a beautiful spot to spend some time. It's really serene and peaceful if it weren't for the mass amounts of pollution, contamination, and fencing. So even though this park is totally contaminated with asbestos, there's no actual signage from the city anywhere indicating that. But there are these two little handwritten notes. It says, "This is a memorial for those that died and suffered because of Chemical Valley. It's behind a fence because the government found out that this park is also polluted by toxic chemicals." So that says it all. After worrying about whether or not we inhaled any airborne asbestos in Centennial Park, we met up with Sandy KINART, one of the founders of the Victims of Chemical Valley Foundation, to discuss how the Chemical Valley has continued to negatively impact Sarnia and how the workers of the industry who fall fatally ill are treated.
People liked Blaine. He just had a way with people. I feel that I am truly blessed to have married this man. I fell in love with this man when I was in grade 5. And I got to marry him. And that doesn't always happen in life. He was always good-natured. He came home from work one day and said, "I can't breathe." It was a hot, humid day, and I thought, oh, okay, so, but realizing he was having a hard time breathing, got him to the doctors. So they admitted him, drained 7 liters of fluid from his lung, with his heart and trach pushed to the side, and they didn't know why he was still alive. They finally diagnosed him with mesothelioma. You have 4 months to live. Get your life in order. This was the feature section in the Globe and Mail called "Dying for a Living." If it takes one man to use his picture to change what's happening, then that's a good thing. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to take his shirt off. He wanted to show people what asbestos will do to you. And he said, "I want people to know I didn't go to work to die." He died in 2004. When he got sick in 2002, my brother-in-law came to the house to say, as a man would, "Don't you worry, we'll make sure everything's okay for her." November that year, my brother-in-law, who came to the house, was diagnosed with stomach and bowel cancer. So in total, we've lost 5 people in my family to mesothelioma, and that does not include all the other types of cancers that have come into the family. I think people don't talk about it because that's where Dad worked. That's where Grandpa worked. And you'll hear this from a lot of the men. Well, you know, I had a good life, I made great money, and you know, I guess it's my time. Well, you shouldn't be dying at 57 years old. I don't know if you've been down to the Chemical Valley in the night. Take the drive down Vital Street and how all the lights are there. Well, as a child, that was part of a Sunday evening. You know, go down, the lights are all there, they're all on, and boy, that just looked like fairyland to us. All the sparkly lights, and wasn't that pretty? My father was an electrician. And back in the day, those tanks were kept pristine looking. The gardens were beautiful. It was lovely to see. And we were proud that we lived in the Chemical Valley. And it wasn't until, gosh, after my husband died, it was like, duh, we don't see that anymore. The flowers are dead, the trees are all dying, the drums are all scungy down there. It looks derelict down there because they don't have to keep up the pretense anymore. The gig's up and the word's out, and it is what it is now. It's the Chemical Valley.